Okay, wonderful. All right. Okay. A very warm good morning, good afternoon, depending upon the time zone you are in, guys. And thank you so much for joining us today. And we have with us, let me start with Robert. Thank you so much, Robert, for joining us this morning. Thank you so much, James, for joining the panel this morning. Thank you so much, Molly. Um, Before I begin, I would like to give a brief introduction about our panelist. Uh, so we have, let me start with Molly first. Uh, Molly is the founder and CEO of Red Clay Hot Sauce, a modern southern hot sauce and hot company that brings a new kind of heat by putting the flavor over fire. Uh, She has been an entrepreneur prior to Red Clay. She has founded and served a company, Babyators, which was listed in 100 most promising companies in the Forbes list. And Molly has graduated from Harvard University with a BA in electrical engineering and computer science. Uh, Welcome, Molly.
Thank you.
Then let me move to Robert. Robert is a president at InnoFlex Solution. Um, Robert is a driven technical visionary leader with management, engineering, staff development, and product innovation experience. He is skilled in engrafting innovations into a mature operations environment. His leadership skills in innovation and prototype development programs is kind of extremely helpful in scaling up his business. His specialities are packaging system and execution. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
We have James with us. James is the co-founder and head of Bissy Energy. Uh, James is a creative and resourceful business leader with a BA in finance and a passion for creating and a love for the natural world. Uh, Bissy Energy is a creator of natural products, and it has a mission of bringing social equity and prosperity to Nigerian farmers. Welcome, James.
Thanks.
All right. I would also like to give a brief introduction about me. My name is Kuldeep. I am the strategist at Analito Automation. Analito is an AI company with a patent pending predictive analytics technology for retail and for D2C businesses, where we understand consumer behavior and product behavior in the finest details, using which we are able to solve a lot of technical challenges as well as engagement and retention challenges faced by businesses. Having said that, I would like to start this panel discussion with one question. Uh, Probably I will start with a poll. And here you go. I'm having this question in front of all of you, which is, do you know which customers are you losing? If you can answer this. Okay, take your time. I will end the poll now. So, all right. Okay, so let me share the results. All right. Okay, so we got the results here. So 75% of the people or businesses feel that they do not know which customers that they're losing. Extremely critical insight from the business perspective. And I would like to take your thoughts on this question. Let me start with probably Robert, if you can. Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, that first is a very good question, and I'm surprised by the results.
Yeah.
Just a little segue. I have a bachelor's degree in general engineering, so just to get that out. Yeah, so the challenge is with today's climate, if you're not close to what's happening in the market, you're going to be left behind. And not knowing who, if you're gaining or losing customers, tells me that you're not aware of competition. And if you look at competition, they're very aggressive, and especially the big food stores, your big CPGs, consumer packaged good companies. they keep a very close eye on the market, and they're contending with private label to win that shelf space, either organically or through growth in their existing brands. But there are some challenges to compete. So the numbers will tell them one thing, but they're trailing indicators versus leading indicators. So I think that there's much more there to talk through and talk about.
Absolutely true, Robert. And I think customer engagement is the key to solve this problem. And what you said is completely right. I think competition is kind of a key thing, which is kind of constantly, no matter which business you are in, you always have this competition, and the only way we can fight this competition is through innovation. Having said that, I would like to move to Molly and ask this question. Molly, you are in this very niche business. So if I may ask, how did you start your business, and what is the purpose when you launched this business? What is your story, if you can share?
So I come from, I've been in the CPG world about 11 years now. This will be actually 10 to 11 years, a year to start. And we launched Baby Eaters in fall 2010. And my current role of CEO of Red Clay, I've been doing about 2 years. I was silent investor of this cold pressed Southern hot sauce, which we launched in 2014, mainly because I was sitting in my favorite oyster bar in town in Charleston where we live and tried the sauce, and it was the best thing I've ever had. And I was like, I need to help this guy bottle this. And so from 2014 to 2018, I was silent, equity, while Baby Eaters was sort of my active day to day. It's a baby aviator sunglasses for babies and kids brand. And then was reading a lot about food and bev CPG and Sir Kensington's ketchup in particular, and how it was disrupting the market with digital savvy, millennial consumer, thoughtfully crafted, beautiful raw ingredients. And I was like, this is Red Clay in hot sauce, and I was very excited about the opportunity to kind of step in and shake it up and prepare this company to sort of grow and take on, some of the bigger guns in the hot sauce space: Tabasco, Cholula, Frank's, Crystals, Sriracha. It's a very concentrated industry, but we have a really interesting way of differentiating ourselves uniquely, because we're cold pressed, because we're fermented, we're a live probiotic, unpasteurized. There's a lot of health benefits in addition to being kind of a foodie hot sauce. But Kuldeep, I wanted to just sort of speak the question, kind of turn that on its head a little bit of, do you know who you're losing? For us, what I found with Baby Eaters and Red Clay is I like to, and this might just be because I'm an optimist, but focus on who are you winning? And I like, sort of really sort of drilling down into what are the buckets of your consumers who come back again and again for reorders, and know them intimately, because that's your tribe, right? For us, we're not the hottest hot sauce out there. We're never going to be the Chili Heads hot sauce. They're not going to buy us, and that's fine. They can go buy something else. But what is the demographic of the consumer who comes back to Red Clay again and again and again? And how can we replicate that and find them through advertising, through partners, through branding? Because that's the people I care about, not the ones I'm losing, but the ones that I'm winning, and how can I find more like them?
Excellent insight and excellent answer there, Molly. I think I must appreciate the point that you touched upon, retention, like whom you are winning hearts with your product, and that's defined. Because once someone has ordered from you, I think if they become your repeat customer for lifetime, I think your business can grow like anything. Excellent answer there. Thank you. James, if I may ask you, how was the business for you in the last 4 to 5 months? What change did you notice? What is the transition, or have you seen a big jump in the number of customers?
Yeah, that's a good question too, Kuldeep. And just to kind of, I guess, pay some respects to Molly's answer, I think that's exactly how businesses should be approaching their customers, rather than focusing on who you're losing, focusing on who you're winning. But I think the question itself is fairly interesting too, because I like to look at leads as customers. I know that they're not necessarily if you're looking at the funnel, but at any point in your funnel, you could be influencing buying decisions for your customers. And so even just paying attention to unsubscribes and which types of content folks are unsubscribing to can give you some decent insight into where you're losing customers and which messages aren't resonating. And especially if they're customers who have already bought and someone who's further down your funnel, that can give you some really valuable insight. And if they've bought before and you have an email, I think when you're a small brand, it becomes very easy for you to just simply reach out via email and, ask a question and see what happened. And oftentimes, if you do that, if you take the time to do that, you can convert them back into a customer. So just speaking to that, I think that's how Bissy approaches our funnel and trying to understand our customers and then also doubling down on what's working. But in the last 5 to 6 months with Bissy, we've kind of gone through a really interesting transition period with COVID and then too with some interesting operational challenges, but it's been a really fun and exciting transition for us. We're sourcing kola nut directly from farmers in Nigeria, which is not an easy task. And for people who aren't familiar with kola nut was one of the 2 original ingredients in Coca-Cola. And so it's this ingredient that is really, when you hear it come off of someone's tongue, kola nut, you say, oh, what's that? A lot of people aren't going to understand, but when you start to delve into the history of kola nut, it being brought by the enslaved peoples of West Africa to the Caribbean and then to the West, where it was turned into Coca-Cola eventually by John Pemberton in 1880, you start to uncover this really familiar story. This brand this product and this ingredient that is actually very familiar. And so over the last 5 to 6 months, we've won a grant for $50,000 through Orgain's Grants for Greater Good competition. And we've really been using that money to lean into our supply chain and to lean into our farmers. And so we're actually launching a couple of new products coming up here in a month. One of them being a single origin raw kola nut powder. And so what we've been seeing is from our current buyers and from the new buyers that we're getting through our funnel that we're able to nurture and to educate on kola nut, we're seeing a ton of excitement for these new products that are releasing. And to us, that's really exciting. And so some of the ways that we're communicating that and talking about that and aligning the brand and the product with the end consumers that we want to have is by creating fun and interactive marketing schemes. So one being quizzes. We're running a lot of fun West African focused, West African cuisine focused, and West African superfood focused quizzes, and we're receiving a lot of good feedback and a lot of good lead generation out of those. And then in addition, running some influencer campaigns with folks within the Nigerian diaspora and folks within the West African diaspora.
Excellent. Wow. That's a great secret ingredient you got there for your business. And I think what you touched upon, listening to your consumers. And I think the customers who are like, why a particular customer was unable to resonate with your brand can tell you a lot, and where's the scope of improvement and on opportunity, I think. Excellent insight there. Thank you so much, James. Moving on to Robert. Robert, if I may ask you, you are in the business of this solutions, so packaging solutions. How do you see, or what is your experience in the last 5 to 6 months? If you can share and share some story about how your business has helped other food and beverage businesses out there.
Yep, Kuldeep, very interesting. So one of the challenges, which are great opportunities, is supply. So the big food and beverage companies, what I've heard and we've communicated with them is that they can't keep up with the volume demand. So the switch has gone from institutional restaurant supply to more of retail sizes and also club. And the challenge the food and beverage customers are having is operational throughput. So the demand is there, but their assets to deliver perform at a certain level. And what they're struggling with is getting those assets to run at their attained design throughput rate so that they can continue that volume and get it out fast, and enable also sales and marketing to run new innovations on those assets. So there's a lot of noise into stabilizing the existing production facilities to get the volume out, and also how to play more in the omni channels. So what they're finding is, shipping directly to home or through third party to Amazon as distribution channels gives them the opportunity to explore new customers, get behavior feedback quicker, but they're struggling with getting that volume out of the store. So what we've been able to do is work on some of the technical business development side of it, and also with a throughput increase, how to tackle unplanned downtime and improve those assets so that they can realize more volume.
Excellent. Well, that's amazing. I think, Robert, because I think your business is going to play a pivotal role in helping other businesses, and extremely excellent insight there, I must say. Molly, I wanted to ask you this one question. As an entrepreneur, when you started this, yes, you have your previous business, Baby Errors, and then you moved to this. What are some of the challenges that you kind of, when you were getting started, what are the challenges that you faced, and how did you solve them? If you can share an insight or a story about it for our audience, that would be great.
Yeah, happy to. So when I stepped in as CEO, the first thing I did, because I come from the world of sort of branding and really care a lot about a brand's look and feel and voice, and that it's consistent on its website and packaging and emails and everything from color palette to font to, again, back to kind of make sure you're speaking to your consumer, you're engaging the consumer who you want to reach. And so we relaunched our site, relaunched packaging, and I drove up to Greensboro, North Carolina, where Fresh Market is headquartered. And that was November, and they picked us up a few weeks later for a May rollout. And then a few months after that, Whole Foods picked us up for 2 regions, starting in the South and then Pacific Northwest. So we had a lot of big orders coming, and my partner, the chef who created these beautiful sauces, who was still literally handcrafting and possibly even hand bottling at that point, I was, like, no, we need actually sort of a robust supply chain to serve these larger accounts, because you might get the first order done, but if a second one comes quickly, there needs to be enough stock to get back on the shelf. And so we did an angel round, and we spent a lot of that money sort of shoring up our ops and finding the right co-manufacturers who can scale to production with us. And basically what makes us different is also what makes that hard. And we're cold pressed, like I said, the way you cold press fresh juice, to keep the plant enzymes live. Basically, first and foremost, my partner being a chef, to really honor the flavor profile of the pepper, and you're not killing the flavor through heat. But there also is a health benefit of it, the fact that it's a fermented food, there's no sugar, it's live. We went to all these hot sauce commands across the country, and all of them are certified for heat processing. So basically every hot sauce on the shelf in the grocery store is boiled, and then they add sugar or preservatives or flavor enhancers. And we positioned ourselves as an incremental addition to the shelf because we're different in that way. We're barrel aged, we're fermented, we're to scale with these partners. And my head of ops said to me, she was like, "You're not thinking outside the box. Who cold presses?" And so we started talking to juice co-mans and kombucha co-mans, and we found a great kombucha factory to actually make our hot sauce. But this was literally after countless nights of sleep wondering if we would actually be able to make the hot sauce for these orders that were coming closer and closer and closer, and found this great partner. And we're probably the only hot sauce in the country, I would say maybe certainly the only hot sauce in the country made at a kombucha factory, because we weren't willing to kind of sacrifice what made us different and special. But it was a lot of stress for a few weeks / months.
True. Well, that's what I think. The challenges present themselves with an opportunity, and as you said rightly, once because as a brand, when you start something, it's small, and then it's time to scale. You need to have this production in place, the packaging in place, the delivery in place to make sure that, because ultimately it's the end consumer is going to decide once they receive the product if they are going to make that second purchase or not. So I think you shared it very nicely, that how you focused on your key USP of keeping it cold pressed and all those things, how they really matter and how you are able to distinguish it from the competition. Excellent
I
insight
think,
there.
I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt, but I think how that applies just generally at large to
yeah,
business and growth is that your business breaks probably 3 or 4
yeah,
different times as you grow. You know, what works for
yes,
a business selling $70,000 of sauce is different than
yeah.
$500,000 sauce, is different than $2 million sauce, is different than
Mm,
$10 million. So you're going to have to go through that scramble, and that's normal a couple
yeah,
different times in your growth,
absolutely.
whatever industry you're in, whatever you're making.
Great. Uh, Great insight there. James, I have a question for you, which is how do you acquire your customers? Or maybe in the last 5 months, you might have seen a tremendous growth for your business. But how do you spend your digital marketing budget, and which channels have worked best for you in engaging with your target audience?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. That's always a great question, trying to understand how to generate leads and generate conversions for customers. And I think it depends on the channel that you're trying to sell your product in. And so with Amazon, we've seen success in YouTube a lot. I think the majority of Amazon's traffic actually does come from YouTube in terms of social media traffic. So, creating video content on YouTube has been a successful strategy for us in the past. And then, specifically, nurturing folks through our email campaigns. So, we've seen a lot of success with that. Sharing some of those quizzes and then getting the opportunity to capture the email with content that is engaging to them and then nurturing them through into a purchasing decision is where we've seen the majority of our customer acquisition and most
Mhm.
of the retention. And then soon we're hoping to roll out a cans and hands strategy, which is really a big belief of ours, is that uh, no amount of social media marketing is going to be as useful or as successful as actually getting your product into people's hands. So going through not so much influencer campaigns where we're looking for posts, but more looking at giving people product and then encouraging them to create user generated content, because that's what people are engaging with now on the internet anyways.
Mhm.
Consumers are becoming much more savvy. Social media
Yeah.
scrollers, if you will, are becoming much less interested in ads and much better at identifying ads. And so the more
Yes.
your content and the more your advertisements look like user generated or looks like something fresh that will stop the scroll, I think
Yeah.
the more success you'll have in creating engageable campaigns.
Wow, that's an excellent insight that you shared there. User-generated content. True. I think consumers resonate with the brands when they feel like they're a part of the brand. And I think when more and more people connect with a brand and have a story to tell, that's when it kind of have a ripple effect in reaching out to more and more target audience. Wow, that's excellent advice, because a lot of brands most of the time are so focused on their digital marketing effort that they forget how to kind of include their end consumers in the campaigns, and how these consumers can play a pivotal role in kind of making sure that the content has a huge impact in the decision making process. So I think this insight can really help a lot of businesses. uh, Moving on to Robert. Robert, in the food and beverage industry, packaging plays an immensely important role. I mean, this is like the experience is defined by the packaging. And brands spend a huge amount of time and efforts in making sure that this packaging defines what the brand stands for. The brand is able to tell stories through this packaging. And we have seen companies like Apple spending so much of money on packaging their products, especially the product that they sell is completely different. But in the food and beverage industry,
Yes.
especially in today's time where the food security has become an extremely essential aspect for the business. What do you think how packaging is finding its innovation and for the food and beverage industry? Any innovations that you noticed recently that you would like to share upon or touch upon?
Yeah, there's the big push is about social responsibility globally. And that's, if you look at the materials that are used, getting out of non-recyclable plastics and using post-consumer recyclable plastics and biodegradable plastics. So the food companies are trying to, they've got edicts on their public website about being CO2 emissions, reducing it by a certain year. Most of it's in the mid 2000s, right? 2025. And that's a major investment for them. And so if you really peel it back and you go back to, that's a great initiative, but there's a lot that has to play, the science and development of the materials.
Yes.
And equally important is the compatibility of the existing assets
Yes.
to run those materials and maintain the parameters. Let's talk about product protection on, say, seal quality, being able to make it through the distribution channel without opening, give you some examples. Well, on the more positive side, the consumer experience, and I gave this example recently on a webinar. You know, my mom is now in her 80s, be 80 years old this year. And I remember when I lived at home, you know, before I went off to college and all that, how young and vibrant she was, right? And haven't been home for a long time. I'm not dating myself at my age. But I noticed she stayed with my wife and I recently, and she does things slower now. And that simple things that we take for granted as, say, baby boomers or millennials or Gen Zs, they struggle with. So opening a package is difficult sometimes if the seal is oversealed, overheated, and they can't open it easily. So, so the packaging, this is not a new issue, but I think addressing the social issues of, you know, reducing carbon emissions, playing in that and being socially responsible. And for the better part, the consumer experience needs to be improved. Even myself, when I open some packages, and I'm a pretty decent athletic person, it's difficult. And it frustrates me because it should be easy for you. So that's on the functionality piece. I'll go back to the buying experience, engineer by degree. So when you look at packaging, the thing that consumers look for is, can you see that food? Can you visibly see the food and how it looks before you open a package? So clarity, clear packaging, simplicity in packaging, and the label itself, the ingredients. When you go today and you see, I think Molly was saying, you know, being cold pressed and some of the beneficial attributes from a holistic medical standpoint, and with the high cost of medical expenses today, consumers are taking on themselves to eat better, to eat more, the right types of foods. You got the veggie products being launched. The key is, are we providing foods that consumers can see, have that experience and what it's going to taste like, or how it's going to feel to them before they make that purchase? And are we doing it fast enough to get it to them? So I think that the food and beverage industry is really, I think that if I do challenges that they have, is taking the new materials and the new food forms and adapting it to their existing operations and being able to do it quickly. And we talk losing customers or gaining new ones. If you can't switch quickly, you're definitely going to lose customers and you won't gain new ones very fast. So I think that's the challenge that we have. Is a great opportunity. The reason why InnoFlex Solutions was created is to help food companies understand that, the nuances of food and materials and how it impacts their business plan and strategy and their suppliers. So we should have the same conversation with their equipment suppliers, production suppliers, so that they're investing in their R&D, looking at the same materials, looking at the same food forms. So they're a partner working with you to accelerate your launch of your new brand or your innovation. So I think that's a space, a white space that we're tapping into to help both sides, the OEMs and the food companies, understand each other and understand what the consumer is looking for to give them a great experience.
Absolutely true. And I think what you said is really right. And consumers are becoming more socially responsible, and they want to buy products and services from companies which have that purpose within them, that to be socially responsible, to reduce carbon emissions. And I think this packaging part that you mentioned is going to play an extremely important role in how brands can succeed, because I think the packaging can define whether the consumers are going to have the second purchase, third purchase. Most of the time, consumers want to know about their product. And I think I've seen packaging with like the distinct font, the typeface, the colors that are being used at times kind of resonate with the consumers, and that's when they go ahead and make that purchase, especially in food and beverage business, to maintain the security of the food. Because I think in the logistics part, where the food is going to be carried from the production side to the end consumer, a lot of stakeholders are involved. And I think food security is extremely good, is kind of a critical element there. And I think packaging can solve this problem. So very right insight there, Robert. I want to like ask one question to Molly, James, and Robert, if I may put it this way. Now that you have acquired your customers and you are able to retain them, how do you kind of estimate your customers' lifetime value? And I want to ask this with a question. So let me launch this second poll for you guys, which is, do you know your customer's lifetime value? How do you understand this? Now that you have so much data point with you, how do you estimate your customer's lifetime value? Thereby, how can you, that can actually tell you the profitability of your business or where your business can be in the next 5 or 10 years. Okay, let me end this poll and let's see the results. All right, okay. Almost same, 67% of the people that they do not know their customer's lifetime value. This is an extremely important aspect that we, while working with a lot of retail and e-commerce businesses around the world, notice that they are able to acquire customers, but they are not able to kind of convert them or have them as repeat buyers. Extremely difficult, because acquiring a new customer is extremely difficult. And so a focus has to be there on different segments of customers, like who are your VIP customers, who are your loyal customers, who are the set of customers that your business is about to lose, or who are the customers who are spending the maximum versus spending the least, or how recently someone is coming and buying from you, what is the interval between their two consecutive purchases. These are some of the areas that we understood that if some business is able to find these insights, they can tremendously grow and scale up their business by 5x in terms of revenue. So this question was particularly pertaining to the customers ultimately. So how do you, Molly, estimate your customers' lifetime value, or what are your thoughts on this particular KPI for your business?
I mean, I definitely keep tabs, since I think direct to consumer year to date, our website alone is something like 50% of gross revenue in this climate where everyone is buying so many groceries online, which was different than what we forecasted, because we're very much a restaurant hot sauce. So we had a third of our revenue coming from restaurants and hospitality, and that went to zero. So we had to pivot there. So I'm on Shopify metrics a lot, watching everything from, you know, daily sales, month to date sales, year to date sales, to average order value, and then lifetime value of a customer for sure. I like to think about it in segments. So segment the customers out into sort of your super fans. And, you know, for us, people that are buying more, you know, 3 to 4 to 5 plus orders a year. And that could be $300 to $400 of sauce, up to, we have a few people that buy thousands of dollars of our sauce a year, that are either gifted or have it in a sitting. I mean, we have like some fun super fans, and we speak to them and engage with them by email strategies in a different way, whether that's a hat with purchase or, a great VIP code or something like that. And then you have your sort of the standard kind of people that might order once or twice a year, or, once or twice a year to date for us by August. And then people who might have only ordered once and never ordered again. And you sort of speak to them and have a kind of a trigger email or a great, a way to re-engage them somehow. And we did something recently that worked really well for us, which was free shipping for them, and so somebody that looks at a $9 bottle of hot sauce and doesn't want to pay, doesn't want to buy more than one, but doesn't want to also pay $7 postal shipping to get it to them. If we're willing to kind of eat that the first time, knowing that a good portion of them are going to fall in love with it and come back. So trying little kind of efforts like that, but certainly keeping tabs on both the trend of average order value, and then lifetime consumer value, but separate it out. So if you average it out, you lose sort of insight into how the different segments behave, the super fans, the sort of regular customers, and then the sort of disengaged selection of customers.
Excellent. I think you're keeping a tab on it, so that's amazing. I think a lot of opportunities there in terms of if you know your consumer behavior well, you can slice and dice the data into so many different ways, and to come up with these actionable insights where you can plan your marketing strategies that can kind of resonate with each funnel or each segment. And that's extremely essential, keeping in mind how a first-time buyer has already made a decision, and basically when someone is making their second purchase, everything that they come up with is basically how their first purchase was, how quickly they were able to discover brand, the product, how was the experience when they ordered it, and when it reached them, did they got value for money? And that defines the second purchase, third purchase. And I think with proper engagement at every stage, with life cycle marketing automation, it can really, really help you in making sure that those existing customers become your lifetime buyers. So excellent. How about you, James? How do you look at customer lifetime value, and how do you estimate it based on the data points?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we've really taken a digitally native and now fully digital, from our digitally native launch to being fully digital still now. And so we get some really interesting insights. And I think the beauty of Shopify is there is some good visibility towards some of these metrics. And lifetime value has been a really interesting one for Bissy, because what we've seen are the super fans have a really interesting buying cycle. Typically, the people who are the most valuable customers for us will order 4 to 5 10 packs of our product at a time, totaling anywhere from $130-ish to $200 for each order they put in. But those come almost like clockwork every month and a half. So we've been, now that we're kind of catching on to these trends, we've been really leaning into that and offering, as Molly was mentioning, some really great like VIP discount codes. If you don't have too many of them, we've got a manageable number. So we're able to actually reach out and interact with each of them and thank them, and just kind of build further that trust that they have in the product, and that affinity they have for the brand. So our lifetime value of a customer is, I think, skewed more probably than most brands. And so I'd be interested though to understand, because we're a year and a half into selling, and so I'd be actually interested go deep into understanding what types of metrics, in addition to like some of the Shopify metrics that they have available on the dashboard, we should be looking at, because I'd love to get educated further in this specific operational KPI.
Yes. So this is one piece of information that I would like to share with Molly, James, and Robert. We as a technology company have kind of deep dived into the consumer behavior to understand the different types of behavior. So the behavior can be a browsing behavior, their purchase behavior, their cart abandonment behavior. And within these behavior, we also are able to analyze the recency behavior, like how recently someone has been to your store, what did they browse, what is the monetary value of the browse content, or what is the interval between their two consecutive purchases, or what is the latency between their two consecutive purchases. So these are we are looking at data and every consumer. So we are not just looking at a segment, but we are looking at an individual customer level. And the consumer behavior is extremely dynamic. So we know that when a customer is making a transition from one segment to other, what messaging to go out to him. And on that basis, we can then come up with the estimation of the lifetime value for a particular segment. So you exactly know that, okay, I need to spend my marketing dollar on this segment, which is kind of not engaging with me. Whereas the segment which is already working for me, I need to take a very different approach so that these best customer become my ambassadors and they drive additional traffic and additional consumers to my business. So that those are some of the key areas that we focus our attention to. And we have been doing all of this analysis on a huge data set where we have seen consumers like with doing $100 million, or let's say customers with products of 50,000, and or for example those who are doing business of around 100,000 to $1 million monthly. So we have seen that scale, and it would be kind of very interesting to see how we can apply that to a food and beverage brand, just like James that you are running. So we can touch on that aspect. Uh, Robert, I have this one question for you. Uh, as you mentioned earlier, that packaging is a key important aspect in logistics, especially for food and beverage industry. And the stakeholders are different. Brand is producing the product and want to get it delivered to the end consumer. Uh, and then the packaging is getting created by someone else. And it's like you are in between, you are like connecting these two stakeholders in the best possible manner. So how do you see how brands are kind of making that extra effort in making sure that their packaging is up to the mark? Because most brand or most businesses may, in order to kind of cut the costs, they may not go that far in spending that additional dollar on improved packaging, and they might stick to what they already have or what is working for them. So how do you see, have you seen any shift in the behavior of brands in this period, let's say in the last 1 year or last 5 years? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I've heard you in and out a little bit, so I think I heard your question. I'll repeat it. So we're talking about packaging materials in production, and are we talking costs? Because I didn't hear everything you said. What was your key question?
Yeah, so yes, so if I have to summarize, let's say with improved packaging, the cost will go up for a particular brand. Let's say if there is the best packaging out there, let's say, which is X, which a brand should adapt, and they have to spend, let's say, a certain amount of dollar. But let's say they have an option of Y, which is still doing the job of packaging, but that may not cost much. So certain brand may go for the lesser cost packaging material. So how do you see, like, I mean, it's a very tricky question, I may think, but I thought, because I've
No,
been
it's
thinking a lot on
yeah,
this, because
yeah,
if brands want to become sustainable, the
yeah.
only way they can become sustainable is by having the right products, by having the right packaging material for kind of delivering their products. So what are your thoughts? I mean, because you have been
Yeah.
in this business.
Very good question. So holistically, when you look at an organization as far as manufacturing, there are a lot of
Mhm.
inputs to cost, right? So total cost of ownership. So if we talk about the conversion cost of the material through the retail
Yeah,
price, that metric is
yeah.
important. I think if I could start from the very basics, and
Mhm.
this is kind of how we work at InnoFlex Solutions. So we've got 30 years of CPG experience working for two major global food and beverage companies, leading big engineering teams, and also for original equipment manufacturers. So we look at this holistically. What we found, there are
Yeah.
really four key inputs for driving costs, sustaining costs, and enabling profits in manufacturing. One is the
Mhm.
materials, product.
Yes.
The next one is are the operators, skill level,
Yeah.
permanent versus temporary.
Yeah.
The other one is the equipment itself, how it's designed and its enabled cost. And the fourth one is the method in which the equipment is designed to run, behaviors. Okay, so
Yes.
any one of those four that is not at baseline will impact your profitability and your throughput. So let me answer the one on materials, which is typically the one that most companies go after. It's reducing costs because you spend an X amount of money annually, if you're a big food and beverage
Yes.
company, on packaging materials. And
Yeah.
if the one thing that food and beverage companies have started to do is make sure what they ask for as far as buying from their suppliers is actually what they get.
Yeah.
Because what happens is the baseline conditions, say of chipboard cartons for some of the retail sizes, some of the basic principles of that board are not maintained. They're buying quality A, they get quality B. And it impacts the performance on the equipment. Yeah. So it's the first easy things that food and beverage companies are doing is making sure what they order, that the companies are following the standards. So follow standardization. And once you
Right.
do that, you get baseline conditions well on your asset and the materials. Then you can start what we call lightweighting or taking cost out of the material to in essence, remove weight and cost to produce. That's done tremendously, but you don't do it at the behest of quality. So the key is
True.
maintaining quality of the product, protecting the product, and the quality of the packaging material to the consumer. So I see food companies are struggling to really get at that, but they're dialing back. And what our company has started to do is go in and we talk about these four main ingredients, and we find out if we get one of the four in order, or whichever one is out of order,
Yeah.
we can attack, say, the materials. Because of the
True.
materials are having problems running because the operators can't run the system correctly because they don't know the baseline conditions. Changing the materials are going to further exacerbate the problem. So we always go after what are the root causes to allow
Yeah.
cost savings on materials, as an example, and even food. So I think to answer your question,
Excellent.
there's a different approach needed to cost savings to maintain sustainability and to create that
True.
revenue that you want. But don't let it impact your performance by changing that lever.
Absolutely. I think without affecting the bottom line, and I think that's I think that's going to play an essential role. And I think I think every brand has a learning curve. So maybe most brands out there may not be able to pay a lot of attention to this aspect, but I think with the kind of education or awareness that's coming in right now from the consumer side, actually, because consumers are becoming more demanding nowadays, where they buy stuff from the brands which are socially responsible. So the one brand that always struck a chord with me is Patagonia, especially in apparel, or for example, Everlane for that matter, which kind of is extremely transparent in terms of how they source their fabric till it reaches the end consumer. I just imagine if the same thing starts happening in the food and beverage industry, it's going to change the game. So maybe the products that people find the like they always go for, they may not go for, and they may go for products or the brands which they may never have heard of, only when brands become more transparent. So I think, as we were talking earlier about how technologies are going to play a key role or enable brands in succeeding. So for example, in case of Shopify is going to come up with their augmented reality soon. They are doing a pilot on it where the smartphone camera will enable people to experience products in 3D. So the same thing may happen. A consumer can just point a camera on the bottle of your sauce and they get to know everything. What are the ingredients? They may not read about it, but they may get to know everything what's inside it and how it can help them. So that's going to really, really help in the consumers in connecting with the brands better. And I think it's going to be a great enabler for the brands also to tell their story. So having said that, uh, Molly, I have a question for you. Like when you entered into this business, you already know that there is a lot of competition, and yes, you want to reach a scale. So where do you see your business growing, like in the next 5 years? Like what kind of revenue you're looking for, or like what kind of technologies that you think will help you in scaling up your production, or maybe reaching out to those million people that you may have never reached yet. Any thoughts or any strategies in that direction?
Certainly. And so, the reason I invested in the hot sauces is because it was delicious. Purely I wanted to support this great chef making a beautiful product. Had nothing to do with any knowledge about food and bev or hot sauce as a consumer category, because I was sort of knee deep in children's sunglasses and kids retail. But at that point, for years, it was purely just kind of angel investing. But when, the way children's retail is, for us, we still own it 100%. I'm co-CEO with the four co-founders are all co-CEO. And it's almost an annuity at this point. The team really kind of runs it without us. And I was itching to get back into the early days. I like the newborn baby businesses. That's like, what's the logo look like? What's the color palette? It's the voice. We have, just all the crazy time. A glutton for punishment. And I also realized that, the way I've built a lot of businesses and I have never had that exit, and it's on my bucket list to just experience that and go through an exit process. And Baby Eaters, we view more as a business to just hold and live on. And Red Clay, I stepped in actively as CEO to build it to sell. And so using Sir Kensington's as a model, or another of lots of other kind of examples in the condiments category where we play, like Siete hot sauce, or Frank's, which sold to McCormick, or, every kind of big entity has a couple different niche sauces in the umbrella. And the way they expand into new product categories is through acquisition, since they don't have internal R&D teams typically. And so we're building a beautiful brand over here with a really engaged consumer base and a great product, and scale it to a certain point. Typically somewhere like 15 to 20 to 25 million is the sweet spot where you start to get interesting to these strategic buyers. And then you sell. And so for us, we're probably finishing this year at about $1 million gross revenue. And our track of growth, we will get to that kind of 20 million, 17 to 20 million by 2024 would be our goal, to sort of think about an exit in 2024 to 2025.
Wow. So you have a roadmap in place
We do.
for all of these.
I'm a planner, Kuldeep.
Yeah. It's like step by step, but I think you are there. I think if you have already thought of it, I think you will be able to conquer it. And
It already happened.
yes, I think you'll make it happen, I think. Great. I have a question for James. So now that you have been in the business for 1.5 years, what is that one learning that you would like to share with like budding entrepreneurs or people who want to enter into food and beverage business? Because when you started 1.5 years back, definitely you must have did your own research and homework to enter into this specific niche area, keeping in mind all the competition out there. So what is that one learning that you want to share that you think that can really help someone who want to launch a food and beverage business?
There's so many lessons. I think
that is one lesson that can really change
there's so many, but I think the one that I've learned is I'm going to speak towards the product. Something that my co-founders Zachary and I kind of set out to do was create a product that was going to disrupt a tired segment, and the tired segment was the energy shop market, which is owned 99% by 5 Hour Energy. I don't want to trash 5 Hour Energy too much, but it's an old product that doesn't really understand the new consumer, and that was never consumed for the quality or the natural ingredients that it had inside of it, nor the taste. And so we looked at the market as, this will be easy to disrupt. And so we launched with this idea, and to speak to packaging and just kind of wrap all of this up to one teaching. And in terms of packaging, we decided that Well, another thing that we don't like about 5-hour-G is the small mouth on the shot and the fact that it's plastic. So
Yeah.
we searched high and low for a co-packer that could fill glass 3.4-ounce bottles. And those are only sold in Korea and Southeast Asia. If you've ever been over to Southeast Asia and
Right.
seen drinks, that's how they're sold. They're sold in these beautiful glass bottles, brown glass bottles.
Yeah.
And so that was the direction we went. And it got very, very complicated very quickly, having ingredients coming from Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
ingredients coming from the US, going to Korea, getting packaged in this glass bottle, and then getting very heavy, getting shipped back to the US, and then some logistical issues with shipping glass bottles and
Yeah.
them breaking on their way to consumers, so having to pay extra for packaging. I think that where I'm going is the teaching is when you're producing a pilot and you're producing sort of an MVP, if you will, a minimum viable product, is to do that, to keep it simple. I grew up learning the phrase "keep it simple, stupid," KISS. And I would say to anyone who's starting out and who's trying to develop a product,
Yes.
really finding that MVP and finding something that will serve the core of your business function
Mm-hmm.
is the most important thing I've learned.
Well, absolutely. I think you nailed it. I think MVP really can help you in scaling up. I mean, that's the one piece of interesting piece that I also noticed in so many big businesses when they launch, they start very small and they kind of innovated when they're very at an early stage. Um, I was like, while looking at McDonald's, how McDonald's scaled up, I mean, they have a phenomenal story of how they started and how particular they were in the way the burger can come out when someone order it, and that really helped them, I think, and especially in your business where you have a very unique ingredient that so supply chain issues, a lot of challenges you might have faced, but I think this MVP thing you really, I think, kind of touched upon can really play an important role for any business if they want to get into a food and beverage industry. Absolutely. Uh, Having said that, uh, Robert, what is an advice if you think, let's say, from a macro point, as a leader in this packaging industry, what is the one advice that you would like to give to the food and beverage businesses or entrepreneurs who are venturing into it, or what are the things that they should keep in mind uh, for in general, and at the same time, if it's like the packaging, what kind of things they should keep tab on at every stage, right, from the production stage till the end consumer.
Yeah. So for me, it's really simple. It's are you solving a problem?
Mm-hmm.
What's the need? And can you
Yeah.
clearly identify the need?
Yeah.
And who are the customers that will buy that need, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then who's the competition in this space?
Yeah.
What do they do well? And what
Yeah.
do they not do well?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, are you helping the ecosystem be a better place? So for us at InnoFlex, it's really about the food and beverage companies being better to the being a steward of their products, ensuring quality and safety through distribution. And
Mm-hmm.
for the OEMs, is to understand the CPGs
Yeah.
and what their goals are. So the gap and the white space is the communication and collaboration. It's not the technical.
Yeah.
It's not the scientists that make the product. It's not the R&D facilities. It's really connecting the dots. And I think you have to have a passion and burn for an end goal. And
Mm-hmm.
for InnoFlex, and the reason why I retired early from Nestle USA to start this company a year ago was
Mm-hmm.
because globally, there is some $1 trillion worth of capital investment in equipment globally,
Yeah.
and more than $7 billion annually in rework. And that's too much money to throw away. So that
Mm-hmm.
means there's opportunity to be better. At the same time, used equipment that's purchased globally is somewhat in the double digits and billions. And there's a 3 or 4% of annual loss in just waste rework. And I experienced it. So I came out of an environment where I saw globally, we have a systemic problem, very smart people globally,
Mm-hmm.
but the tools and the processes don't connect all the way. And we have demographics and age groups that are retiring.
Yeah.
And so that tribal knowledge being captured and transmitted across both OEMs and food and beverage companies, there is a gap. So my passion is food companies win, get food on shelf, and stop the waste and rework, and allow innovation and renovation of products. I'm a firm believer in opportunity to try something new, and to be able to give that company the opportunity to do it by freeing up some of the wasted opportunities. So to answer your question real simply, you have to know what the white space is, what's the opportunity, what problem you're trying to solve, and then go after it and get a lot of coaching. Get a lot of people around you that can help offset what you don't know. My background is an engineer, not marketing, not sales, but to surround myself with people and learn.
Absolutely. Wow, that's excellent. I think that is that, because there's a learning curve for every business and for every brand. And I think with the right stakeholders in place, and they can get to know a lot. I think it's all about connecting the dots in the right direction, which can have a great, a small idea that can scale up and become very, very big in the long run. Before we wrap up today's panel discussion, I have one more final question for all of you. And uh, someone who has already launched a business. So Molly has a very great roadmap for her business. So as an entrepreneur, Molly, what do you think, how a brand should, where the brand should focus their attention? Definitely product is that one important pillar, but after the product, where should a brand pay their most attention to? And how do you think when they're small, or like when they're medium size, uh, should should they have all of their marketing done internally, or should they kind of do it with the help of agencies or experts? Well, what are your thoughts on it?
So I feel like for me, entrepreneurship and sort of growing a business to wherever you take it is about perseverance. And it's a marathon. There's no one decision that's right or wrong. It's a million small decisions made and getting up and doing the work, and years of hard work and a commitment to that. So you really have to kind of be proud of what you're doing and enjoy the journey, because that's really it, in terms of where you focus after product. Obviously having a product and packaging that's engaging and a voice that resonates on the front end is important, but a brand is a live entity. It's not, you're done, put that in a box. You're constantly tweaking and adjusting and listening to feedback and growing and learning and expanding into product categories. And I think for me, the success there is engagement with your consumer base, and we talked a lot today about sort of tribe. And I think finding out who your consumer base is and having a dialogue with them that's active and seeking their feedback and listening to their feedback. And when you get customer requests, recording them and acting on it, so you can grow with your customers as they grow into new interests, tastes, food trends, whatever. In terms of marketing, I'm a firm believer in sort of the businesses I lead of keeping your core team really lean and having a team of just like top performing A game players and bringing in third-party experts to sort of help where it is needed. So we have a director of marketing who actually, in my case with Red Clay, is a very talented graphic designer. With Baby Eaters, she was more strategic. And so we would hire really talented graphic design work for Baby Eaters, but with Red Clay, she can do that, but we bring in great photography, or we bring in a digital ads team to sort of make, get those ads into the world, or a PR team to help us with influencer strategy. And so you can dial up and dial down the vendors based on your budget and seasonality, but sticking with that kind of core roles. We've got a director of customer service, of marketing, of sales. We actually wholesale and then direct to consumer sales. We have two people for two sides of the business. But I think bigger picture is, starting with that beautiful product, but being open to pivot and grow and change with your consumer base, and listening and having it really be an interaction.
Wow, excellent advice there, Molly. Thank you. James, what are your thoughts on this particular point or question.
Well, I just think Molly makes a great point, and it's something that we learned and something that I touched on with my KISS lesson, and keep it simple, stupid. It just what we were able to do is realize very quickly that we weren't going to disrupt 5-hour energy because our consumer was very different than 5-hour energy. And it seems like it should have been very apparent, but I think when you're starting a business, we felt like we'd done our homework, but you can never know until you know. And so that's kind of what Molly's talking about, is just that flexibility and that willingness to pivot, and willingness to wake up every morning and be ready to just be knocked back down. I think is really important. And so that's actually something that we've done with Bissy now, and that we've been really fortunate actually in this time to have been allowed to do with Bissy, which is to move away from this kind of more complicated supply chain, and to get more at the core of our business. So launching the single origin powder directly from Nigeria, and that's coming from a lot of consumer feedback about interest in the actual raw ingredient, and kind of being fed up with an addiction to a coffee or not being able to find a good alternative. And then in addition to the folks who are actually consuming the energy drink itself on a regular basis, some of those evangelists that I talked about earlier, a lot of their feedback was on wanting more of it because it tastes really good. And that was a huge focus for us. It was making sure that the product tasted better than any other energy drink on the market. And we accomplished that. And so now what we're getting are people wanting 12 ounces of it, not 3.4 ounces of it. So we're also releasing a 12 ounce form. And then more feedback we got was on a carbonated drink. So we're also releasing some carbonated SKUs and really kind of hitting the market with this 4-product arsenal, I guess. And that's all really based off of this customer feedback that we've had the privilege of receiving. So.
Wow, that's excellent advice that you have shared there, James. Thank you. Robert, final piece of wisdom from your whole experience. What do you think? Where's the future of food and beverage industry? Like, if you want to, let's say that one thing that maybe is still not there. What do you think that one thing that will be there in the food and beverage industry? Like that one standard that do you think will change the game, or what is that one new innovation that you think will come maybe in the near future?
Yeah, so I'm going to put my operations hat on. I think if you look at automation and autonomous vehicles, and the technologies that are used today, like self-driven cars, right, on the streets, Uber and all that. Well, inside production facilities, that's happening also. So that technology is translating into robots, autonomous robots running on the factory floor, taking in certain stages of product, ingredients, raw materials, dunnage, and fortunately, unfortunately, placing workers where it's value added and enabling consistency, controlled costs for production, flexibility, which is key. I'm going to use this word flexibility, so that products through supply chain have a heartbeat and a rhythm. And I think a key point is reduce the touch points to produce your product. Okay. So if you start in your manufacturing facility, through the equipment that's producing, to operators, through warehousing, through logistics and transportation, the key is reduce the touch points, reduce the formats that you place those products in warehousing, reduce the cost, reduce the quality defects by using technology. So I like to see more strategic use of, say, robots on lines, cobots on lines, autonomous vehicles, and have workers, you don't just throw them out, but there's a shift. Have them understand that this is a function that's value add for you to do, and be more, it helps us in COVID, because one of the challenges we saw in COVID was we couldn't put people in some operations in those facilities because of the liability. Therefore, there was a constraint on volume getting to the stores. I'm talking food, not medical products. Okay. And what we saw is accelerated the need for applying that technology tactfully inside the factories or plants. And I think if they did pilot projects in grafting this technology where it's minimal cost now. It's not the big spike on cost to bring this technology in. They'll find that they're ready for the next wave of whatever. All right. And not to mention digitalization, data help to drive the business. So I think, some of your bigger companies are slow to change because they're so huge. Some of the smaller co-packers and co-manufacturers can do this quicker and can leverage that with conversion rate back to their client, the food companies, on case count to bring in some of the technology quicker. So one of the things we do is we help these big companies understand the technology tying to their goals and where it makes sense for them to bring it in and be ready for flexibility. So if you're going to do variety packs, if you're going to go brick and mortar retail, if you're going to go direct to consumer home use, what do those packaging formats look like and how you can do it in your facility without sending it out to a third party to do it and all the waste that goes with it and the delay and the cost that are subject to it.
Wow, excellent. Thank you so much, Thomas. So, Robert, I must say, this has been an excellent panel discussion today, and I would really like to take this opportunity on behalf of our organization and Alito for participating as speakers in this discussion today. And I must say, the quality of thoughts that you guys have touched is really, really amazing. Molly has touched upon this insight that striked a chord with me, like perseverance, like stay on course, and like product market fit. Once you know that you have a product market fit, you can scale up, and if you have a roadmap in place, you can grow to any level. And marketing is an extremely important aspect once you have this product ready that can go out to the consumers. So this is one piece of learning that I have taken from Molly's thoughts that she has shared today. James has really nailed it in terms of the way they are able to kind of disrupt in the big brand that. So basically what James, the MVP thing has really kind of touched me. I mean, because I've seen so many products that has a very small shelf life because they did not innovate it. So MVP is something that gives you an advantage of kind of understanding the consumer behavior at a very early stage. And especially in the food and beverage business, where already there is tremendous competition. If someone is launching something new, an MVP can really, really help them. So thank you so much, James, for sharing that insight. Robert, I must say the 2 points that you touched upon today, brands, food and beverage brands becoming socially responsible, how it can have a tremendous impact on their bottom line, because people love brands who are socially responsible, who know how they are keeping their carbon footprint low. And the second aspect that you touched at the last, which is adapting to technology to improve production facilities, like having the right pilot being done to adopt to these technologies, and how robotic process automation can tremendously help brands in succeeding in scaling up their or ramping up their production facilities. So the excellent thoughts being shared today. And I must say that let's keep this conversation going. And when amazing brains come together, a lot of new things can come out. With this, I would like to say thank you so much once again for taking out time today this morning and sharing your insights. And we look forward to learn a lot from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuldeep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.